Hello and welcome to another episode of the Stock Market Today video. It is Tuesday, January 21st, 2025. We just came off Trump's inauguration and a long holiday weekend. So to help me break down the action of today is Ed Carson, our news editor. So welcome back. You're doing double duty on the on the news stuff with the Stock Market Today videos, and you kind of talked about, hey, the Trump rally, it's continuing to roll on today.
Yeah, it's continuing to roll on, and a bunch of stocks flash buy signals or extended gains. I want to take a look at three that did well today: Rubrik, DoorDash, and Skywest.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, let's go ahead and bring up some charts and go through and see how the indexes closed. Looks like the Nasdaq Composite closed with about a 0.64% gain. The S&P 500 with a gain of about 0.88%, a little bit stronger of a close there. Dow Jones Industrial Average up 1.24%, getting back to 44,000 for the first time since December. And then the Russell 2000 with a gain of 1.85%, almost to that 50-day moving average line, but extending its gains above the 21-day moving average line, which is something that all the indexes had in common today. But kind of bringing us back to the NASDAQ, which is the index we've been tracking the most. I mean, a notable thing right now is that the relative strength on the NASDAQ is kind of faltering a little.
It is faltering a little bit. I think some of that's Apple.
Mm-hmm.
That's been a real laggard. I'm not sure if it's the biggest or it's the second biggest, but that's really struggling right now. So QQEW, I think, is showing strength. That one's doing pretty well. Just recently getting some RS line. It hasn't had a tradition of having great RS line, but it's doing better there. So I think there's breadth. There's actually a lot of breadth to this. And so yeah, RSP. That one above the 50-day line. So you have RSP above the 50-day line, the Dow above the 50-day line. That comes after, Friday's move on the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ getting above. So, most of the indexes, except for the Russell, and that's getting closer, above the 50-day line. They're getting well above the 21-day line. Things are moving right. The leading stocks are acting well. Lot of industries. You never know. We're still in a range. Where all these indexes are still within a range. You never know if Trump's headlines have been positive, they could easily go negative. I mean, he could say something, and there's earnings coming up. So this
Yeah.
could still happen. But the thing is, it's sort of like you have to live in the now. And right now, things are going well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of like this: if you started with exposure about a week ago at 30%, and then you add 10 percentage points every day, just gradually, yeah, you're already up to like 70% or so. It
Right.
doesn't take that long. But if something had happened along the way that didn't work, you wouldn't have been that exposed, especially that day. If it were so, gradual doesn't mean glacial. And it actually, if this rally is worth really taking part in, taking a few days or a week or two to get up to fully invested is not bad as long as you're making that progress.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. When the Nasdaq got above the 50-day moving average line last week, and then immediately, came back below it, I was getting a little nervous. It
Yeah.
was certainly not a sure thing that we were going to continue up above the 50-day moving average line. And it's worth noting here that we still kind of have a downtrend line that we haven't quite broken up above against the Nasdaq Composite. S&P 500 kind of did that on Friday of last week as it got back above its 50-day moving average line, and today really kind of cleared 6,000 in a big way, which is something that I know that you and Webby talked about on Friday.
Yeah, I mean that's just nice key levels, getting short-term levels. There are more resistance levels. It's just nice that we're seeing each one is getting above. We seem to be making progress. It doesn't mean that every day has to be great. It could, tomorrow might be a down day as long as but we're trending up again, and we're very, yeah, the S&P just seems to have the record high, seems to be pretty much all it needs to get above.
Yeah.
Even if you weren't paying again, but there's just a lot of stocks that are flashing buy signals. I mean, the fact that the Nasdaq isn't, the RS line isn't going up, that's a reflection of the fact that Apple is down. I mean, Tesla's consolidating. Tesla looks fine. I mean, I don't want to mean, but that's not surging, in that
Hmm.
sense, but it's acting very nicely.
Right.
So there's just the fact that other things are doing well beyond that is really, really good. There's a lot of opportunities for
Yeah.
investors.
And then here's the FANG FNGS. Um, you know, it's certainly not broken. It got support at the 50-day moving average line, but it's just not quite as powerful as it was, which again has a little bit more of an effect on the market cap weighted indexes, as opposed to the equal weighted, like RSP, as you mentioned. And this is something that we've been talking about for a little while, where you could easily see this kind of starting to carve out the right side of a base, and that's kind of doing exactly what you want, and a little bit more, as you said, that breadth. Now, one of the things you mentioned on IBD Live this morning was the 10-year Treasury yield. So, talk a little bit about this move in the 10-year Treasury yield and what that's doing for stocks.
I mean, that's definitely helping. Look, I mean, there's treasury yields are a headwind for stocks, and this is becoming a tailwind. You can just see that they're part of the reason why we rallied, for much of last year was because the yields were coming down quite a bit. And we held off. We kept on rallying for a while, but it was starting to pinch, as it got up to got up to a 52-week high. So to have this come down, some tame inflation numbers, maybe sell the news on the Trump. We talked about, so are we going to sell the market rally on the Trump? Well, maybe to a certain extent we're selling the Trump, boost in yields anyway. This is whatever the reason is. This has definitely been a big reason why stocks have rallied over the past week.
Yeah, and a lot of that started with the CPI report, of last Wednesday, right here. So that kind of started this latest move lower. You also wanted to take a look at FFTY, which is representative of the IBD 50. This is run by Innovator as an ETF, and this is kind of what growth is doing. So whether you look at FFTY, ARKK, which is something that we did put on Swing Trader today, I have a position in that. There is certainly a growth aspect to what's working right now.
It's a growth aspect, and I also gave you a bunch of other ETFs that show it's not just a growth thing. I mean, some of it's growth, so there's a lot of things. If you want growth, you can get growth. If you want to find, industrials or chips, actually, that's getting up to a key level. That had come up and then came back down because Nvidia. It's basically Nvidia. Nvidia got to record highs, then immediately turned around, but now Nvidia is coming back a little bit, and other things too. So
Yeah,
that's
you mentioned
impressive.
industrials. I mean, that's a nice move above. A lot looks a lot like RSP,
Yeah.
in terms of that, rounding out of a kind of a base here, and easily seeing this look up the right side, and certainly a much better relative strength line than we've seen in recent history. XLF really started taking part as the earnings started coming out on JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and so on. But that's been traveling nicely. And even XLE, which has been kind of in the doldrums if you look at it on a weekly chart, not doing much of anything. That's starting to get some participation.
Yeah, I mean, it's down today because, crude oil was down a little bit, but big run. So again, that just shows you the breadth. I mean, there's any measure you're looking at, there's a lot of breadth, a lot of reasons to be excited about things here.
hmm So let's go ahead and shift over to some individual stocks, and we'll start with this is a cybersecurity Rubrik, RBRK, and kind of have, if you just take a look at the weekly chart here, a really strong move, that it had, and really held most of the gains and just let that 10-week moving average line catch up to it.
Yeah, so I found some support recently. Now today, it sort of broke above a trend line, maybe got above some short-term highs. It's got the consolidation is too short for a base, but it's on track to have a base after this week. So it's getting a little. It is a ways away above the 50-day line. This would have been aggressive, and you probably would have wanted to get onto it as quickly as you could, especially after you did it today. But it's this is where this has some shift towards it's probably moving towards profitability. Not there yet. Strong growth. This is Microsoft backed. It seems to be the strongest name right at this moment. The cybersecurity, it always seems to be somebody takes the lead,
Right.
but this is doing very well right now.
hmm and certainly one of the things that does stick out here is that relative strength line again,
Yeah.
getting a little bit better here. But as you said, above the 50-day moving average line, this is already 20% extended above that 50-day moving average line, which is pretty easy to do with some of these moves that are 5% like today.
Yeah, and this is one of the I don't usually like doing something like this, but this is a little different because it didn't really feel like there was a buying opportunity before this. I mean, it would have been pretty bold to buy it off that 10-week. Could have done it. I mean, but it was at the time, it didn't quite get there either. It didn't ever quite get there, and then it sort of rebounded. It would have had to have been quick on the trigger when the market wasn't looking so good. I mean, it would have worked out. But there's plenty of times when you buy stock, if you buy a stock heading toward the 10-week line, that it's not going to stop.
Right. And, certainly worth mentioning that a lot of these stocks that we saw in kind of leading positions got support at the 10-week moving average line, didn't even come down to their 50-day moving average line. Some of them got support at their 21-day moving average lines, which really kind of put them above most stocks that were like the indexes coming and testing below those 50-day moving average lines. So definitely Rubrik is one that sticks out in that regard. And DoorDash is another one that, has really kind of just done a very shallow consolidation. While it did dip below the 50-day moving average line, not really breaking it in a big way. And again, on the weekly chart, you see it just kind of is carving out this flat base here with just a 10% depth.
Yeah, it was nice and shallow. And again, forming a shallow base or even a base like Rubik's, but this one definitely shallow after a strong run and the market was sort of correcting. Hey, this looks good. It's coming up toward the buy point. Today it had, I think, an early entry. I think you definitely could have been buying this one today. Sort of was clearly moving above the 50-day line downtrend. So I think a lot to like with this name. Profitable and all that. It looks really good.
Yeah, so this is on leaderboard, and I do have a position in this myself. I have to disclose, but yeah, looking very strong. And then we can go ahead and end with Skywest. Transportation airline has been one of those hot groups lately. This is number two, the group. Talk a little bit about the airline stocks and what looks like a breakout here, but with earnings coming up and some earnings that we might have to talk about before we close here.
Yeah, Skywest and had a nice breakout. It sort of teased back and forth, but really strong move. This stock of the day has earnings coming up, but it's triple-digit earnings growth the last couple of quarters. It's supposed to be one more, then it's supposed to slow down. But this is not too far from the 50-day line. It's right in the buy zone. It's a hot group. There's a lot to like about this. The growth is, it has all the things you would like. It is supposed to be slower growth next year, but because the comparisons get tougher, but still solid growth. I mean, 19% is pretty solid, especially after that year that it's had in 2024. So a lot to like. But yeah, there is more airline earnings. We had more airline earnings tonight, actually,
Mhm.
front with United. So
And
Jets,
here's a
yeah.
look at Jets real quick, just to kind of show the group and how strong this has been. But Delta Airlines that recently had earnings, nice pop on that. And you mentioned United. I do have a position in United myself. That looks like it's up 3.5% in the after hours on its earnings report. Any details that you have on that?
It beat views, and that's pretty much all I had. Is I saw that they beat views. I think they had pretty good guidance as well, and so this is really moving. And so just this has been the leader, at least among the big airlines. It's extended, but looks great.
Hmm.
Um, and another name is Netflix. Some people may have heard about this little streaming company. Uh, so this company, that's a false bar, I think. That wasn't real, but it was basically closed right below the 50-day line, but it's gapping up 13%. This is a stock that goes up or down 10% or no more on
Right.
earnings. So this is going to break out of a flat base, but it's going to be may end up being extended. So that's a gap up. It'll be potentially actionable from that. It pulled back below the 50-day line, but didn't, but quickly sort of moved back toward it. Strong earnings, really strong earnings, strong subscriber growth. This is the real leader in that group, obviously.
And of course, one of the things that they've changed live events, a little bit more on that. Big partnership with WWE, and they're doing the Monday Night Raw, which I am very familiar with my son having just gone to his first Friday Night SmackDown this last week. But yeah, football, a lot of things going on there on the Netflix side. Do you know if any of that is hitting the earnings this quickly, or are we going to have to wait a little bit to see how some of
I
that
haven't
hits?
seen. I didn't look at any of the details, and may be on the conference call. It'll be interesting to see how that goes because there's costs involved. But
Right.
those I don't know when those costs came in or when they're going to do that. I mean, because one of the things is that they had actually been reducing costs as a share of revenue. They just don't, they've been licensing content on the cheap as other streaming companies sort of cry uncle, and so then that just means that the revenue's going up and their costs are sort of falling, cooling down. So that's why there's been this tremendous earnings growth for the past couple of years. Really transformed after slumping in 2022, really has come on, and that's supposed to continue.
Yeah, and as many of you know, I do have a share for my wife that I've been holding on to on for her for her sake since way back here where she wanted to buy it at the
I
Lowe's and I
think it would be your
refused.
sake too if you had sold that.
Yeah. Well, I've played it a number of times, but with a larger position, and I recently got out of it as it went below the 50-day moving average line, and so now, yeah, it's up 13%. So I'm missing out, except for that one share. I should also mention that this was something that we had on as an options play. Too late to do that options play now, but I think it's worth taking a look at Gavin's article to kind of understand how you might play options. He goes through how the expected range was about 8%. So if you kind of set your short strike on a bull put spread at the 800 level, and as long as it stays above that, you could kind of get a nice $100 per contract with a risk of 400. All it had to do was stay above 800. So a pretty good chance that it was going to do that. So a nice little profitable trade that Gavin gave our readers this morning. So.
Absolutely. There's one more name I'd like to look at, Interactive Brokers. It already moved, tried to break out as rival Schwab had strong earnings, but Interactive Brokers had earnings. And so that looks like it's going to be a clear breakout tomorrow. So three more going in there, and nice positive start to earnings. It's still, as David Chung was saying on IBD Live, we're in second gear. Next week, really go up to full gear. But everything seems to be going pretty well for the market right now.
Yeah, and it's nice to see that a lot of, when you go to our market surge list, breaking out today, 14 stocks there, near pivot, 76 stocks, recent breakouts, 48. So you're really kind of filling in a lot of these strong areas, and that's exactly what you want to see in a healthy market. That you've got merchandise to buy. In fact, that was probably an early warning signal that maybe this market was doing something special before the indexes, because there were a lot of these setups. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you a lot for all your color there today, Ed. I really appreciate it.
All right, thank you very much, Justin.
Okay, that's going to wrap it up for us today. Do join us. We're about to do our swing trader status update. This is a weekly thing that we do. It's going to be on YouTube. So if you are subscribing to us on YouTube, you're going to just see that live in about 30 minutes. Thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you all tomorrow. Take care now.